The 11th question of this series is one that I was asked this week by a reader of the Charisma School newsletter. Do you become good in bed with sexual energy? First of all, let's define the term good in bed. A person who is good in bed is liberated and spontaneous in sexual activity. He is good in giving and receiving pleasure. He or she enjoys sex and everything associated with it. He accepts sexuality and becomes free in it. We call this sexual freedom. So, does a person with sexual magnetism automatically have sexual freedom? Well, not necessarily. A person can have a natural sexual magnetism and not have sexual freedom. Sexual magnetism is not necessarily a precursor for being good in bed or in sexual activity. It seems like a paradox, I know. If you are comfortable in projecting sexual energy, why wouldn't you be comfortable in sex? Well, due to the several psychological blocks, those who seem to emit sexual energy strongly can completely repress and block this sexual energy in the sexual act. And it's not as uncommon as you might think. So you can have a great sexual energy projection, yet be completely blocked in the physical sexual interaction. This is what happens in the natural use of sexual energy and sexual magnetism. But when you consciously train in sexual energy, achieving sexual freedom becomes much easier and natural since you are aware of the subtle energy dynamics which underlie sexual interactions and learn how to change this in yourself. To make matters clearer to you, you can categorize people regarding sexual energy and sexual freedom in 4 different types. Of course, this is mostly for those not trained in sexual energy. The first is the category, which is the ideal scenario. Those women or men with a high degree of sexual magnetism who also have a lot of sexual freedom. In other words, they are good, spontaneous and adventurous in bed since they love the feeling of everything related to sex, and most of all, they accepted it fully. Usually, these individuals, either women or men, have no problem getting sexual partners. They don't really need sexual energy training. Mostly, if they want, the training is to become more conscious of what is happening so that they can increase their skills and pleasure even further. Then, the second category is when some women or men have a high degree of sexual magnetism but have a low sexual freedom. These are what Freud described as hysterical women and men. They crave for the sexual touch and project their own sexual energy very well, yet when it comes to the actual sexual interaction, they are very restricted and blocked, which causes psychosomatic issues. Once these individuals get a proper training in sexual energy and consciously understand how this energy works, they can unblock the sexual blocks in the bedroom. There's another category of individuals with low sexual magnetism, yet a high sexual freedom. This is fairly uncommon to happen, but it's a reality that we can't ignore. These are those who hide themselves in the real world and don't allow their sexuality to come true, yet they are very free in the sexual activity. A training in sexual magnetism can change them in a deep way since the basic building blocks of sexual energy are already there. And finally, we have those with low sexual magnetism and low sexual freedom. This is the more common of them all. You don't express yourself sexually in either way. The sexual energy training takes longer, but once they are done, they become almost a completely different personality. Once you become aware of sexual energy and energy in general, it tends to be very easy to identify people in these categories. It's not like you are never wrong, but you tend to be more right than wrong, which is very useful to find sexual partners who are a good fit for you. If you don't like repressed sexual partners, then you simply don't pick them. I've also been questioned if you can unblock the sexual freedom of someone, and the answer is yes, but it depends on your own skills and how depressed they are and the amount of time that you want to invest. If it's a long-term partner of yours, then it might make sense to help him or her overcome the blocks, but it must be something that your partner also wants to do. And yet, depending on the severity of the blocks, especially psychological, this might prove to be an impossible task for someone who is not a therapist or skilled in any kind of therapy. In Charisma School, we have 2 different trainings for sexual energy. The first training, Sexual Energy Mastery, handles the discovery and manipulation and development of sexual energy. It uses a specific and innovative process to help you discover sexual energy and allow it to flow freely inside of your body. This will end all blocks and repressions of sexuality in an easy-to-do way. The second training is a Sexual Magnetism, which works mostly in a projection and externalization of this energy with specific techniques to project and use this energy for specific applications, laser targeted or increasing your overall sexual magnetism to be able to attract sexual partners easily. For more information, the rest of this series, a frequent newsletter on these topics, and more training courses on sexual energy, personal magnetism, charisma, and magnetic gaze, visit charismaschool.com.